Have you ever been scammed by peer pressure or peer pressured into doing something that you just didn't want to do? Today, I'm going to talk about that on this episode of today's Misguided Mentors. Welcome back, guys. Hopefully, everything is working right now. Let's make sure so we're not having any technical issues like last time. Everything seems to be fine. Thanks for tuning in. If you're watching on the Instagram while I'm streaming, it's good to be back. It's been a couple days since I posted, so I want to make sure that I'm staying as frequent as possible and as consistent as I can. I want to talk about this. So before I get into the peer pressuring into scamming people, or just even if it's not a scam, just the peer pressure that's involved with business and sales these days, I want to focus on that topic. You guys have heard me talk about it several times, but I just want to focus on that alone today. And not only that, I think it's important to start off by reminding you guys, anybody who follows my pages, whether it's YouTube or it's Instagram or Facebook, whatever that may be, I want to remind people that like this channel isn't, I'm not focusing on exposing scams 100%. I think there's just way too many channels like that, which I love. I like people doing that, and that's obviously part of this channel, but I don't want people to get this confused as far as like, oh, this YouTube channel is just him talking about people and talking about scammers and exposing people and exposing scammers and grifters and all that. That is not what I want the page to be just about. This page is about helping people. This page is about bringing awareness and not just calling people out and giving my opinion about who I think is a scammer, who I think is a grifter, and all that. I most certainly do give my opinions, and you guys know me, I don't hold back on that, and I really just speak from the heart on particular individuals, but I don't want it to be just that, and it's not going to be just that. I'm here to actually contribute, and my way of contributing is actually creating something that's going to help people navigate the self-development space, the self-help industry that has just blew up because it's just easy to really get inside someone's head. And I'm going to talk about some of those reasons, but I always want to make a huge emphasis that this channel is about helping people. It's not just about exposing people. That's just one key aspect to it. And, sometimes I got to call things like I see it, that's not what this is about. So I cannot stress that enough. I want to make it very, very clear that I'm not just focusing on drama and clickbait and all that stuff. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of people that do it, but there is a huge handful that I'm starting to notice. And that's what they do. They just highlight people and they bring awareness that way, and that's cool. But when I see that stuff, I'll give you my opinion on that. When I see other people's channels where they're just focusing on exposing people, it's like, okay, that's cool, but like, why are you exposing them? I never understand that. I never hear that. Why are we talking about that? What are you doing to help people to reduce the amount of these scams happening? Like, what are you doing to contribute other than just exposing people? And maybe a lot of them haven't been in like the self-help space or the self-development industry. And maybe that's why I have such a bigger passion to help people with like some tangible skills and like ways to navigate the space so that they don't get scammed and they don't get deceived and peer pressured into doing business. That is my main focus. I want to help people by, yes, pointing out some things, calling certain individuals out, but the ultimate way I want to help people is like, all right, here's what I want you guys to know. Here's how you can navigate. Here's how you can identify misguided mentors. Here's how you can spot a cult. Here's how you can tell or not if someone's trying to scam you or peer pressure you or manipulate you into doing something. I want people to know why this is happening to them. It's more of the internal work is why I'm doing this. I want people to kind of look inward to themselves and figure out why, because there's always going to be scammers. There's always going to be grifters, especially with it being an unregulated industry. This is going to continue. And it only got bigger and it just continues to get bigger. So now I want people to look inside themselves and figure out why this is happening to them, because it happens to good people. It happens to smart people, happens to good-hearted people that care about others. unfortunately, it can happen to the best. And so I want to help those people wake up to themselves and kind of tap into their intuition, tap into those red flags that they're most likely seeing and feeling. We just get deceived. We take the temptation and we start going down a path and becoming a person we never thought we'd be. So anyways, I'm going on a tangent now, but I think it's super important. I want people to understand why I'm doing this and what the goal is for me. It's not just about exposing people. It's about helping people. It's about encouraging people to look inside themselves and figure out why this is happening to them, why it happened to them, why it's happening to their friends, why it's happening to their family, what they can do to prevent it, what they can do to bring more awareness, things of that nature. So hopefully I made my point. What's up, Sweet Goth? How you doing? So let's get right into it. Obviously, the thumbnail of this particular stream is got me and Andy Elliott yelling at people, right? Well, the reason for that is because he's one of the guys I call out pretty consistently. And the reason for that is because he really utilizes all the scamming tools in the kit. And peer pressure is one of them. And I want to talk about peer pressure because a lot of people hear the word peer pressure and it's like, peer pressure? Like when an adult hears the word peer pressure, they probably automatically think of like childhood. They automatically think about school, right? Like peer pressure is pretty relevant in school, right? Almost everybody has gone through peer pressure. That's just the way it works when you're growing up as a kid. You've experienced some type of peer pressure. You yourself may have peer pressured people into it, whether you know it or not. So peer pressure is really relevant when you're a child and children are trying to get people to do things that they want them to do and the other person may not want to do. All right. These same tactics are being used in sales and business big time. And so I want people to know, again, going back to the topic of like looking within yourself, a lot of this peer pressure tactics that are being used in sales and business is achieved and accomplished because of our childhood experiences. Matter of fact, I believe that like a lot of us as adults, we don't realize we're being peer pressured, or we ignore that fact and we make up excuses why we need to be peer pressured, why it's part of the process, why maybe we're dealing with a professional. Peer pressure is part of a professional I'm working with. No, it's not. So peer pressure is really just, when I'm talking about that being relevant in schools being relevant in sales and business, it's really just schoolyard tactics that's being utilized in order to deceive and manipulate people into making business decisions. And it's no different than you being in school and your friends trying to peer pressure you into doing something, skipping school, right? Like, hey, 5 of us are going to be skipping school at lunch. You're going to come, right? And then you're like, no. And then the peer pressure comes on and trying to make you feel like you're less than, like you're not going to fit in, like you're going to be part of the cool kids. You're going to miss out. All the same feelings when in that particular example in school is the same feelings that a person's going through when they're being peer pressured in sales and business. It really is no different. And I want to talk about how this is happening, why it's happening, and maybe bring a little more awareness to this, because peer pressure is not just in school. All right, guys, this is in sales and business. And these guys are trained master manipulators and have figured out that that's worked. That's a tactic that's worked since the age of time. That's a tactic that has worked for people in sales and business because it goes back to your childhood. All right. And unless you learn how to, which is the last thing I'll get into, unless you learn how to stand your ground and say no, you are going to be taken for a ride, and you're always going to do things that you don't want to do. You will always leave a crack in your shield for these guys to prey on you. All right. And I want you guys, I really just want people to pay attention to the peer pressure aspect of this. And I'm going to try to stay as focused as I can just on peer pressure. But yeah, this topic is taking down barriers for people to enter creating a business, a service that they feel called to. Yes. And then how's it going, Lorelei? I feel like I mispronounce your name every time. I'm sorry. Pressure is a form of animals using the herd mentality. Exactly. And I just brought that up a second ago. That is one aspect of it, the being left out, not fitting in. And it's something to recognize within us because it's a biological attraction in humans and animals as well. Like we want to fit in. And that's being preyed on. And so not recognizing the herd mentality, people will just ignore that. And so it's just something to pay attention to, just because, there are biological things going on with us, and not all of them are beneficial to us. Not all of them are, well, how do I put this? Some of our biological tendencies get used for bad and get preyed on. And so that's something to pay attention to more specifically. And then, you were saying the herd mentality is all cult tactics, 100% cult tactics. And the herd mentality tactic is used in self-help cults big time, like more than anything. And you were saying you see where a lot of people, even including yourself, are not thinking as freely as we think, and we do it, and it can be a really low level subconscious pattern, 100%. Which is why I talk about, and again, we're going to start, as I do more videos, we're going to start tapping into more of the subconscious that you're talking about, your intuition, your conscience to do what's right, getting on a higher frequency of spirituality within yourself. And I think that's a whole nother topic, but is probably the foundation of what to pay attention to, so that you can see these things coming. And so you can navigate this self-help space, this predatory atmosphere effectively. Let's see. What's up, Chris? The grifters are taking advantage of people's problems by giving them a shortcut solution, and that lets them avoid their real problems. 100%. That's another good point to make. You're saying people want to show shortcuts, and that's where the grifter starts their sales pitch. 100%. And I agree. That's what's called grifting. Exactly. There is no, the whole, and there's so much to that, right? Like trying to stay on the peer pressure topic. Maybe this is relevant or not, but people want to be better. People want to do more. And it's very, again, the whole herd mentality, going back to that topic, when you see someone on social media, you see someone flashing around the private jets, the Lamborghinis, the money, all that stuff. It's naturally attracting. Biologically, it is attracting to us, and especially because we want to fit in. And so that's something we all fight with, especially people that glorify those things and don't really have a good foundation within themselves. And the shortcut becomes a little more appealing to people that are living in that world. And then when someone is looking like they embody all these things, they have all these things, and you too can have it. Matter of fact, I got the playbook right here. I got the solution. I got a template. This is going to take you to the promised lands. The people that really aren't in touch with themselves will gravitate towards that and think that the solution is outside of themselves. And that's where we get into a huge problem. Again, that's more of a spirituality video, which I am going to start doing more. But it's all relative. It is all interconnected, and you guys are all 100% right. All right, so I talked about that. Let's get into some of this peer pressure. So I talked about how the peer pressure in sales and business is really just utilizing schoolyard tactics that have been used since your childhood and for a long, long time. The fitting in, the impressing people, all that stuff is very relevant in school, right? Trying to impress people. And then we talked about some of the other tactics already that go hand in hand with the peer pressure, right? Being left behind, you're going to miss out. I talked about that, and I used an example of how people are skipping school, right? I want to talk about something really quick here that fed into the peer pressure. So in case you guys didn't know, the pandemic really blew up the coaching and the mentorship space. And the reason for that is because a lot of people had uncertainty and doubt, and there was a lot of fear going on. Just people didn't know, and especially business owners who make money off of getting to the consumer, selling products. Businesses were just looking at being shut down. They really just didn't know. And a lot of businesses did shut down and didn't make it. And so it blew up. Matter of fact, I don't know if these numbers are right, but I was looking at how much it grew. And it looked like it grew. Let me just take a peek because I think I still have it up. I don't even know how. This seems so unreal that I have to double check. But it said the business coaching industry in the U.S. was valued in 2018 was valued at almost 14 million. Oh, I feel like it should have been more than that even. According to data now, the business industry was valued at approximately 11 billion in 2021. That's outrageously huge. I don't even know. That's so huge that I even have a hard time believing that. That's a skyrocket of a difference. So I'm gonna look more into that to find out like a little more hard numbers that reflect a little more accuracy, because that was just a quick search and what Google provided me. But we know it blew up, and pressure was already on by the economy. So therefore, it made it very, very easy for these grifters, for these misguided mentors to come swooping in and apply those peer pressure tactics even more so. Yeah, I mean, the entire economy was worried, especially business owners. We're like really scrambling, trying to figure out. I was a business owner in like 2 years in at that time. I started my business in 2018, in early, almost the beginning of 2018. And so by the time the pandemic hit in 2019, I don't know exactly, I was almost 2 years in on my company. And so you can imagine I was also part of that crowd that was, wondering what's going to happen. And I was nervous. I was scared. Despite all that, I was actually plugging away and still just grinding and doing my thing. I didn't stop, and I didn't actually feed into the economic fear of COVID and all that. However, I did fall for the scam. I did fall for Grant Cardone's grifting, and it was easy for them to apply that peer pressure on me and get me to take the bait when it comes to peer pressure in sales and business. And so that's how I can actually identify this and talk about this so much, because I experienced it. This is not something I'm just spectating on. This is not something that is just my opinion. It's also my experience. My opinion has been, was developed based on my experience for several years with that organization. But that wasn't even the only organization I got advice from. Like there was a bunch of other grifters I looked up to and bought some packages from. And so it was, I've experienced it and I can see what happened. So looking back on it now, 100% peer pressure played a huge factor in that. Matter of fact, I've talked about this experience before, but when I broke down, I think I broke this down in like several videos, but one that comes to mind is when I did a video recently on the 10X growth conference that Grant Cardone is trying to say is his last one. Well, what happens during those events is you're there for 3 days. You're grinded on for hours, from 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 or 6 at night. And then you're networking with other people who are also brainwashed and rah, 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 and, all idolizing the same dude. When during the networking events and during the entire time, you're getting pitched by all his 20-year-old sales reps who know nothing about business and have zero to no experience. They're out here trying to pressure you, and the exact same sayings that Grant would always say and brainwashed you with and pounded you with would get thrown back at you and used as peer pressure in the sales. So they would try to sell you something, and then they would try to throw that back at you and say, well, commit first, figure out the rest later. Those who pay attention. You got to get proximity is power, and then all these sayings, right? It's as simple as that. Even this is just one example I'm talking to you about, but that is massive peer pressure. And I can honestly say that I spent money in those exact scenarios just because I felt pressured. I felt like I wasn't staying consistent to myself. I felt like I wasn't going to fit in. I felt like I was being left behind. There was a false sense of urgency being created, like this is a limited time offer. You're never going to get this kind of a deal again. Um, I wasn't going to be part of the cool kids club, I guess. Like, it preyed on my childhood peer pressure. Like, and this is honest. This is just me being transparent. Um, and and this doesn't say this isn't for me to say that I have no control over myself or I don't take accountability. I'm a grown man and I take accountability for that. However, I also see what happened, and it's a very real thing, and brainwashing and manipulation is a very real thing. So I think a lot of people try to hide behind that accountability thing, and they try to judge people on the accountability thing. And that's just not the case. Like, you can hold yourself accountable, but you can also talk about these experiences and the tactics that are being used and the brainwashing and all this deception I talk about. So it's pretty messed up. But yeah, you were saying, Lorlel, you were saying the growth into the billions you expected by 11. Yeah, it's a little crazy. It is. 11 billion. That is a pretty drastic increase. You were saying your experiences are best teachers, and encouraging due diligence is priority. And then also you said you've seen that video and it was a great video. Thank you for that. And yeah, I only brought that up just because I was trying to give an example of one scenario where I felt peer pressured and I spent tens and thousands, hundreds and thousands on just that type of scenario where I was being pressured into doing something. And then, I've also talked about I won't bring it up. I've talked about that enough, but there's so many times I could go on a checklist of scenarios right now where I was peer pressured into doing something I didn't want to do. And it's just a fact. It's just a fact. And I want people to talk about, or excuse me, yeah, sure. I want people to talk about it too, but I want people to pay attention to that and be honest with themselves, because I think a lot of people get caught up in their ego, and they think that peer pressure only exists in school. And as adults, we tend to kind of hide behind the ego and act as if we're above peer pressure. We can't be peer pressure. Like, what? Peer pressure? Nah, I can't be talked into something that I don't want to do. Believe it or not, the inability rather to say no to somebody is a huge problem in this world. And it's mainly within adults. The inability to say no, combined with the peer pressure tactics, is how these guys are able to get people to do something they don't want to do. Usually it involves spending money. And I want people, if people would just be a little more honest about that and be a little more open-minded and transparent about that within themselves, this would happen less. People would be saying no more frequently. People would be standing their ground and asserting themselves and establishing boundaries so that this happened a lot less. Instead, unfortunately, ego plays a part and people think they're above it. They don't think that it can happen to them. And more than likely it's happening to you. If you're making those claims, it's happening to you already. Lorelei, you were saying that you got caught in the spider web and you got caught in the high control cultish group for 7 years. Very, very sad to hear that, and I'm sorry, and I'm really glad that you're not. Thank God. You were also saying you were throwing good money after bad. Once you get into that quote unquote mindset, you start investing in your time and energy. It's really hard to cut your losses. 100%, and I've talked about that several times actually, which I'll bring up here again in a second. Chris, you were saying the entire culture has been atomized, and now it's all peer pressure, transactional culture since the social environment crashed around 2008 and never recovered. What's up, Darlene? Darlene was saying the entire environment also makes people suspend their critical thinking. Let's go with the herd. Yes, we were just talking about that a second ago. 100%. So two things you guys brought up here. It is really hard to cut your losses. And that's actually one thing that keeps people inside of a cult, especially when we're talking about money. When one of the reasons one of many reasons I kept being attached to Grant Cardone is because I spent almost $250,000 doing that. And I was like, gosh, I can't leave now until I get some of that money back. Like I need to get an ROI before I cut ties. It just kept me in it longer. And so, yeah, it's really hard to cut ties with that for some people. And you're 100% right, Chris, about everything being transactional, which is why I made a video on how to just navigate the networking space, because most people are in there trying to just get something from people. It's all this, there's no meaningful relationships being created. Nobody's trying to actually connect on a human level. And everybody's got something in the back of their mind that they want from somebody, an agenda. And if they don't think they're going to get something from you, they won't even take the time to actually interact with you. It's terrible energy. Terrible energy. Sweet God, you were saying you're glad you found, or you were saying to Laura Lay that, or Laura Lell, I can't tell if that's an I or an L. I should probably zoom that in and find out, huh? But you were saying it can be a hard cycle to break. Absolutely. Yeah, 250K is a valuable lesson. Yeah. I can honestly say that, I could have spent less to learn that lesson. Let's put it that way. And you were also saying many people dump millions into these things now, 401k and stock market pumps. 100%. And I've talked about that also, about how I've literally heard Grant Cardone encourage people to take out their 401k. I've had people reach out to me personally in the DMs and share some just heartbreaking stories about how Grant Cardone deceived their grandma into pulling out like a HELOC, a home equity line of credit on her house to invest with Cardone Capital. And it ended up not paying her what she thought. Like I've heard some crazy stories. You can imagine, especially I put myself out there so much that I periodically get people reaching out to me and sharing their personal stories and saying, hey, I'm glad you're talking about it. This happened to me. I got taken for whatever 100K. My grandma, this, that. It's terrible. It is just terrible. So it's happening. You're 100% right, Chris. So let's talk about this. All right. So I talked about the psychological part, especially stemming from childhood. Yeah, it's absolutely a rug pull. Bait and switch, smoke and mirrors. There's another term for it. I can't think of it right now. Bait and switch, smoke and mirrors, cloak and dagger. There we go. I like to use those terms because that's what it feels like. And then let's see here. All right, I talked about the fake sense of urgency. The Stockholm Syndrome is not relative to this, but it is relative to the peer pressure. So if you guys didn't see, I don't know if I did a specific video on this, but I talked about the Stockholm Syndrome and guys like Andy Elliott, Wes Watson, Grant Cardone does it too. There's a thing going on where it's definitely pressure related, but it's the Stockholm Syndrome effect in sales and business. So you got a lot of people out here calling, you guys have heard me talk about this several times, but I think it's relative to bring up again because it is peer pressure related, but they'll pretty much make fun of you, your body weight. If you got a little extra fat on you or whatever, they're gonna make fun of your body weight. They're gonna make fun of your the way you look, and then they will make fun of your bank account and encourage you to change all of that, which is great. It's positive to change all that, but making fun of people and then turning around and saying, I'm telling you this because I care about you, and then turning around again and saying, nobody in your life is telling you this because they don't care about you, and then framing it like that person's the only one that cares about you. It's very much a different type of pressure, but total pressure tactics and very deceptive, very unethical to be doing that. Matter of fact, this is why it's crazy. It's so unregulated that people can do anything they want because you can't track mind manipulation. You can't prove brainwashing. It's very unfortunate. So that's why I was saying in the beginning of this video, I want people to understand that I'm not just here exposing cults and scammers and misguided mentors. That's part of the channel, but what it really is is helping people in an unregulated space. Because if I can't stop the industry, then I'm going to try to get in front of it and help as many people as I can just by speaking about this, talking about certain things, bringing awareness to people's self. There's other things I can do other than just exposing people. And so that's why I brought that up. Laurel, you were saying that to you, it's criminal. It's criminal. You even ask people to get their credit cards out and put it on their credit card. You walk out the door once you start hearing that. Oh my gosh. You should hear some of the tactics I've heard. I've heard people say, like I've heard Dave Robards, he's one of Grant Cardone's top guys. I've heard him in a room tell somebody, you got a credit card? They were like, I don't have any money. And he was like, you got a credit card? And they were like, yeah, but I don't think there's anything left. He was like, let's just swipe it and run it anyway and see what happens. And then I've heard people say, I don't have the money at all. And they literally was encouraged to get a credit card and then put it on the credit card. Like, this is just crazy. So yeah, when it comes to the credit card thing and the pressure to use your credit card, not saying that, a credit card is it just depends. I don't know. I'm not big on the credit card thing either. If you don't have the money to pay for something like self-help, then it's probably not a good investment at that time. And then the whole thing they peer pressure you in is like, oh, well, you're in the situation you're in right now because you haven't made this decision yet. And if you make this decision, you're never going to have to deal with this problem again. You're never going to need a credit card. Like, there's just so many things I've heard when it comes to peer pressure. It's crazy. So you're saying there's a scam going on unless otherwise proven to not be in some real way that can independently be confirmed. And you're also saying tearing someone down to build them up, that's a military tactic. Yeah, that is a military tactic, 100%. Chris, you're saying it's unregulated, but you're not sure this kind of stuff can be regulated. It's more of an internal issue that people want to shortcut to money, family, and love. 100%, it's never going to be regulated. You're right. I don't know if they can because you can't track mind manipulation. You can't prove brainwashing, like I was saying. So it's going to continue to grow. It's going to continue. Sweet Goth, you were saying that's what most of us in the space do. We know we can't stop it, but we can at least educate on the dangers and tactics to avoid. And I'm doing great. Thank you so much. I appreciate your positive encouragement and your reinforcement. And then Laurel, you were saying it's also a fallacy and it's a numbers game. Think of one person with an idea to benefit many and have that change the world. Other tactic, we have powers in numbers. Again, not true. It's so true. And then Sweet Goth, you're saying there's actually a lot of similarity between military and cultic and high control groups. 100%. Absolutely. And I see that. A lot of people think Andy Elliott was in the military. No, he wasn't. He's just really good at using military tactics. All right, so how do you deal with this? Let me talk about something a little more tangible for people. How do you deal with peer pressure? Well, the easiest way to start with a foundation is you got to stop caring what people think about you. Now, hear me out. That doesn't mean you stop caring about people. All right. That just means you stop caring about what people think about you. Get right with yourself. Be a good person. Operate with morals, good morals, and show up as yourself. You combine that with the ability to say no, because it's going to make it easier for you to say no. Once you're good with yourself, and then someone else comes along and tries to give you this whole immature peer pressure way of trying to get in your head, you're like, no, thank you. All right. And you don't even have to be rude about it. Obviously, if you need to, if someone keeps pressing, then yeah, you can get mean with it or a little aggressive if it gets to that point. But it really starts with yourself. Get right with yourself and start practicing. Here's another thing you could do: start practicing saying no. Give yourself an exercise. In our days, we're presented with things to say no to several times. So maybe a good practice. I thought about this actually, giving people an exercise to do. But one thing you can do is in your day, make sure you say no to somebody one time. You don't have to be rude. There's nothing wrong with saying no. You can respectfully say no to somebody. And there's several times in your day where you're probably doing something that you wanted to say no to. So challenge yourself. Look for something to say no to, and don't go out of your way or anything, but just keep in mind, like, oh, okay, there's going to be something in this day that I'm not going to want to do. I'm going to be proposed by somebody. Someone's going to ask me to do something. And that's going to be my opportunity to just say no and not have to explain, not, and see what the reaction is. But, being able to say no is, there's such a lack of it that now it's a superpower. And that's pretty crazy to think about. But it's true. And so practice saying no and really just get to a point to where you truly do not care what people think about you. I think those are just a great foundation to start with that. Chris, you were saying, I'm doing great because it's not the complete fault of the scammers. It's an internal issue that we can't seem to solve on our own. 100%. Yeah, there's so many layers to it, and that's why, I talk a lot about it, because there's no way, I'd have to do years of talking about this topic to finally get to a point where I've exhausted every single thing involved with scammers, with internal reasons why we fall into this, how we're able to do it, what's actually going on. There's just so many layers to peel back, and so much to uncover and bring awareness to. Lord Lel, you were saying it's an old school importance of building a firm foundation. A farmer can't burrow from what he has. He can only make plans from what he planted and what he's reaping. Stability, sustainability. Absolutely. And then you were saying fall down 6 times and get up 7 times. Sweet Goth, I know you tell people no. I love that. You seem like a person that is very assertive, and I like that. And people can learn from you in that regard. But yeah, to your point, the analogy of a farmer planting seeds. The soil of your mind. When I was I write lyrics sometimes, and I was making something relative to that. Talking about planting seeds in tilling the soil in your own mind, and planting your own seeds, and planting the plants that you want in your seeds, instead of having open land for people to just plant their own seeds in it. Something to that effect. But it is very relative. It's a very relative analogy or metaphor or whatever you want to call it. And then you're also saying, be self-sustaining, being self-sustaining and needless. Looking for an external source to fulfill an internal need is the kind of it kind of sets the dynamic up, in your opinion, and I agree 100%. So to answer that, bring that back around one more time so people heard it. How do you deal with this? How can you stand up against peer pressure? Stop caring what other people think about you. Love yourself, love who you are, care about other people with this still. And get used to saying no. Practice saying no. I don't care if you got to role play it and you don't. Let's just say you didn't have opportunities to say no to somebody, which I don't believe is true. But whatever. Look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself no. Maybe, I don't know, but there's some ways you can practice saying no, and it has become a superpower with the amount of people I seeing unable to say no to others, and it's really sad, but embrace that, learn that within get honest with yourself. That's how you can deal with it. Maybe like ask yourself that question. Do I have a hard time saying no? Why do I have a hard time saying no? That's a question to ask yourself too. If you have a hard time saying no to people, why? Who in your life do you have a hard time saying no to? What kind of people do you have a hard time saying no to? These are questions people should ask themselves. And so if you're a person listening to this, not necessarily now, but also you've watched this video later down the road, I'm going to challenge you to be honest with yourself and to take a pen to a blank piece of paper and ask yourself these questions and be honest, because this is some of the most valuable work you can do within yourself. and it's going to strengthen you. It is definitely going to add a layer of fortitude to your mind and your spirit. And so it's important to actually do simple practices like this. So one, you can learn more about yourself, and two, you can actually build a stronger foundation so that people can't get inside your head. Like, peer pressure is basically about controlling someone's mind. And that's why cults use peer pressure. They want to control your mind, right? When they can control your mind, they control your actions and what you do. And obviously, one of those actions is giving them money. But it's more than that. They get you to recruit for them. They get you to promote their cult. They get you to do a lot more because they're able to use peer pressure to get inside of your mind. And that's scary. That's scary to think about. But yeah, that all stems from, childhood, schoolyard, immature ways of doing things. And it's quite fascinating to see that comparison. So, yeah, 100%. Say no and don't defend it, you were saying. And lyrics, awesome way to express. Yeah, it is. I love writing down lyrics. Write it down, but not in the Grant way. Right? Yeah, definitely not in a Grant way. I'm not talking about doing like affirmations and manifesting, which I think that is positive. Unfortunately, a lot of people in the coaching space have taken manifestation and affirmations and used it for bad and put a twist on it. But yeah, I'm not talking about that anyway. But what I am talking about is just kind of just when you write things down, you ask yourself those questions, it helps you kind of just learn about yourself more. Not necessarily creating something by writing it down, but just learning about yourself more. But yeah, your opinions will change while personality integrity grows as we feed it daily. Absolutely. Yep. And again, that's along the lines of manifestation affirmations, I believe. Darlene, you were saying you're a female raised in the 70s and 80s, and you were taught from a young age to anticipate people's needs and to be responsive to the same, and taught to say no. Get real. Hey, that's honest too. You know what I mean? Like, if you weren't taught to say no, that's why, another reason why I'm trying to encourage people to say no, and get used to that and being comfortable with that and not feeling guilty about saying no. So we're not being taught that, and that's very, very true. And it's very dangerous when we're talking about cults and self-help gurus on manipulating people. It's because they weren't taught, it's people, they target people who weren't taught to say no. They target people who have a hard time saying no. And so that's why it is also a superpower to embrace that. You're taking notes. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, anchor it in 100%. Definitely laughing and poking a bit of fun helps. It's pretty much all you do anyway. Yeah, you got that Scottish humor, and I love that. I definitely find humor in lots of things, and it's definitely a way to keep things light. And you retain more when things are humorous as well, I believe. All right, so we talked about, oh God, we talked about this, we talked about that. That was actually the last thing I was going to say, was how do you navigate this space? How do you navigate peer pressure? And that was the last thing I wanted to say, and I just hammered it home. I'll say it one last time. The way to combat peer pressure, the way to prepare yourself for peer pressure in life, and especially in the self-help space, is to not care what people think about you and practice saying no, right? Get in touch with yourself a little bit, get good with yourself, feel good about yourself, feel good about your morals. That's all you need. If you know you're a good person, you treat people with respect, you acknowledge people, you like people, you care about people, but and you also don't care what they think about you. It's just such a good balance to stay protected and to assert yourself and to have those boundaries in place. And most importantly, just a simple practice: start saying no. Start saying no. Start noticing moments in your life that you can say no, and you should say no to people, because that's a huge problem for people right now. I'm not joking when I say that. I think we can all be honest enough to see that, wow, a lot of people get themselves into a situation, whether it's a scam or some type of situation that they didn't want to be in, because they had a hard time saying no, or more specifically, they couldn't say no. They didn't say no. And now the entire experience is just, oh God, stressful, unpleasant, regretful. Because, once you do that, if you don't start saying no in a time you want to say no, you're really disrespecting yourself. You don't think you're valuable enough. There's just so much deeper issue that stem from that. And I don't know, there's a lot more psychological things to unpack with that, as far as how you view yourself, how you're looking at yourself, and you're people pleasing potentially. Obviously, more times than not, if you're saying no, you could be caring what people think about you way too much. So there's just a lot to consider when you're talking about having a hard time saying no. So anyways, I'm gonna jump off here. I'm gonna have myself a late lunch, and then I'm going to, carry out my Sunday. So I'm gonna wrap your guys' comments here, and also thanks, Darlene. Like Laura Leo was saying, thank you for your similar for you, is what she was saying, and it helped you from being harmed in a high control family. Very interesting. Yeah, because again, being able to say no is not, obviously, yes, it's going to help you in a self-help scam and a self-help development, but in life, there's other people that try to pressure into stuff. Peer pressure is a part of daily life. I feel like you are going to run into peer pressure at some point. Someone trying to convince you of something, try to talk you into something. And it's important to know when you're trying to be talked into something that you don't want to do, and standing your ground and just being like, hey, yeah, I'm good. I don't want to do that. Like, with respect, I'm going to say no. But yeah. And you're saying how not to, again, yeah, exactly. Laura Lel, you were saying absolutely how not to be a target. 100%. So I really appreciate you guys chiming in with your experience and your feedback. All positive, all smart, very helpful. And, everybody sees the comments and watches the video. So I appreciate you guys dropping some information on there for people to look at, and seeing that, that I'm not the only person that thinks this is valuable information. And we're talking about peer pressure, and we're talking about that happening in cults and self-help spaces and misguided mentors trying to put the peer pressure on you. This is super helpful for people to see. So absolutely. And yeah, Sweet God, you were saying very good stream, and you have a lovely community here with you too. Proud of me. Thank you so much, all of you. And none of you are on your own. Absolutely. Very, very good last message to leave everybody with. So I think that's a great way to end the stream. Thank you guys so much for chiming in. I will check in with you guys. I should be able to do a stream tomorrow. So until then, have a fantastic rest of your Sunday, all right? Take care. We'll see you then.